Kuykendall. He served in the U.S. Navy and during World War II, and we're here to record his story for the Veterans History Project. Ted, could you explain how you ended up getting involved in the war effort?
Oh, well, while I was going to school, my last year in school, I graduated in '39, and at that time, Europe was involved. My thought was that this country is going to be involved in it sooner or later, one way or the other. So I decided I'd rather be in a board ship with a clean bunk than be in the foxhole. So I joined the Navy, and a friend of mine and I we tried to join the Navy earlier, and he was overweight and I was underweight, and so later on, that was in the spring, right after we got out of school, and then later on, in December, I tried again, and they did take me that time, so I went in January the 5th, 1940, down in Dallas.
Could you describe your training and what you were ultimately trained to do?
Oh, of course I went through boot camp there, and then I went on special detail, and then went to board ship on the old Nietzsche's tanker, went out to Pearl Harbor and went aboard the USS Nevada. And originally I was on the 6th Division for a while, and I went to Fleet Machine Gun School on the old Utah, and then I got transferred into later on into the E Division, Electrical Division, and so it was interesting work. Of course, the ship was an old ship. It was a sister ship to the Oklahoma, and there's only 2 of that class built, but the old Nevada was the first oil-burning ship ever built, a battleship, and it was the first 3-gun turret built. And of course, I always say that she being the oldest battleship out there in Pearl, out of the 9 battleships, she was the oldest and the only one that got underway, so people shouldn't discourage old age because it's still got movement to it when you give it a chance, It's just slow about moving around.
Well, prior to the attack on Pearl Harbor, could you describe what your day-to-day duties was like? What was life like on the ship?
Working in the E Division, we had a regular circuit to take care of, either heavy machinery, or blower circuit or something. And you made your rounds, checked your motors and all this, that, and the other, and other stuff like that. And the old ship had 120 DC as main power, which very few people know or use that power anymore. But that was the main power for the ship. Was four generators, 2 fore and 2 aft, and steam-driven generators. She was a steam-driven, turbine-driven ship. Oakley was the Oakley was not she wasn't a turbine ship, but and we operated out there on maneuvers, and go out on detail and have maneuvers at different times, and general quarters at night, and drills and drills and drills. You got sick and tired of drills, and of course, just like anything else, the better training and all you have, why the better off you are. And so the training paid off, I think, for not only me, but I mean for the people on the ship. Because when you, but still going through a routine like that, and it gets boring. Anything like that, you've got that many. There's that much activity, and we was all out there at Pearl, and that was, my guys, there was more soldiers and sailors out there in Pearl or in Honolulu area than there was any place else in the country. Because I think our nation was anticipating more than we knew. We didn't know a whole lot what was going on, but diplomatically and everything else, they knew that something was happening, getting ready to happen. And that's the reason they called all the fleet back in.
Oh.
Because never before had the fleet been back in Pearl. But there was 96 ships in Pearl on the day of the 7th. But the carriers were out, which was a fortunate thing for us, because we would have been in a lot worse shape to start off the war with, because out of the, well, the whole battle force was built around battle wagons at that time, battleships. And of course all of them was either heavily damaged or on bottom right after the 7th. And so we had to depend on our carriers and our cruisers. And
So it sounds like the attack that occurred, that you guys really didn't think that that was something to be concerned about. And what was the mood like in the fleet during that time prior to the attack?
well, I think that everybody more or less felt that it was going to happen sometime. But being down on the totem pole as far as you are, you don't get that kind of information. And of course, you didn't get a daily newspaper to read or anything like that. What you did get was your news on the airways, and of course that being out there, you only had a few stations out there. You didn't get as many stations back as you did in the States, and so I don't think the bulk of the people, I don't think, knew how serious the situation was till it happened. And of course, just like when it happened, why it was just there, boom, bang, and you just responded and went to your battle stations and performed your duties as you needed.
I mean, could you describe the morning of December 7th? What occurred prior to the attack, and then when the attack occurred, where were you?
Well, we were at sea on maneuvers. We'd come back in Pearl the 5th of December, and they brought an ammunition barge alongside, and they started taking off target ammunition. And I know that night the stern crane, they'd burned a solenoid out on it, and we worked on that thing till about 10 o'clock and got permission to take a shower. And then I went on mid-watch. I had to watch from 12 to 4, security watch, and I'm on mid-watch. And then after I got off watch, I went down my bunk and then got up at chow time, and the starboard crane had trouble. And we was up there, we're on the starboard crane, getting ready to start working on that when the band was assembled out on the fantail, and we heard all this machine gun fire and bombing and stuff over at Hickam Field. And of course our comment was that our Army's having drills on Sunday, they're stupid nuts, not knowing that what was actually happening until about that time. One of them made a pass across the ship, and old dude Cottrell says it's those blankety blank Japs, and so we all headed for our battle stations, and the band went ahead and finished colors. The old one in the band said he just left his instrument playing, he went below. And it was hectic then, because of course there's only about 2 hours or so, but we were right behind the Arizona, and so old Boats and Hill was repair one. When I went in repair one, nobody had picked or plugged the phones into CIC.
What is repair 1 in CIC?
Oh, repair, we had different repair parties, and ours, repair one, was out right at the break of the main deck, and or the old geedunk stand. And Ed Hill was Chief Warrant Boatswain, was more or less the head honcho in the repair party. And when I plugged the phones in, they reported that there was a torpedo hit frame 40 on the port side. Why, he walked in and said, "What was that?" And I told him, and he said, "All right, you and you set Z," which was set watertight integrity. So I went below decks to start closing up the watertight integrity as much, and then the bomb went off on the boat deck, and concussion came down, and I went across the compartment. And
So the concussion from the bomb actually knocked you down and below deck?
yeah, of course it went through the boat deck into the galley, and concussion open hatches, and I went zooming across the bunks and everything else. And when I crawled out of there, why, I went back up to the repair one, and it was gone. It had blown apart. I don't know where anybody was at, so I done various and sundry things, helped out where I could. I got some water from the guys in the sick bay. They was hollering for water. I went in the pantry and got some water. And but it was hectic. There's a lot you don't remember. I mean, a lot is just a haze, even to this day. And I know that we were very, very fortunate. I mean, our ship was the only one to get underway, only battleship to get underway.
Could you describe what it takes, or what it took, what you guys had to do to get the Nevada underway?
She was a turbine-driven ship and had steam turbines, and they were getting ready to change the boilers from, I don't know, one pair of boilers to another or something. And so we were fortunate enough to have enough steam up to get underway, and which generally it takes several hours to build up enough steam in the boiler to have enough steam. So we started out the channel, and well, I guess they passed the word for all ships to sortie, and so we had started out, and they'd cut her loose from the quay where we were at, right behind the Arizona, and we went around her and started out the channel, and then they told us not to go out but do the submarines, and they ran our nose aground over by the floating dry dock where they blew the shaw up, and then the tugs pushed us over on a little what we call Waipu Point. Pushed us over there, and they anchored her there, and we sat there, and in a couple of days, why, she just settled on everything below the main deck was underwater.
Was that from the torpedo hit? Was it taken out of
From
water?
the torpedo hit.
Okay.
And the port bow, frame 40, and of course, there's so much flooded, and so she just finally settled down there, and we sat there on bottom till the 12th of February. And that's when they brought a patch out there. Patch was 40 foot by 60 foot to cover the hole.
Wow.
And then they took the patch off and laid it in the cane field, and they towed us into dry dock. We made temporary repairs and left out there the 22nd of April under a convoy, come back to the States. And they brought we went up to Bremerton in dry dock up there, and they started repairing the ship. And then later on I got transferred to gyro school. And while down at gyro school, I got reassigned to new construction, so I didn't ever go back to the old Nevada. I went to this, 5 of the ships built there in Seattle, Tacoma. And number 2 was a USS Kern, AOG, gasoline tanker. And I spent about 2 years on her, and we went all down the South Pacific, around different places, and hauling gas into airfields and whatnot. I never engaged in any other activity. I remember there down at Pelew, I was watching those we was off the watching planes take off from the airfield and make circle around Bloody Nose Ridge and bombing that thing. And but we was not. Our ship was never involved in any activity like a lot of them were, which I figured I was very, very fortunate. And then.
Were you concerned about being on a gasoline tanker during the war? Was that a
Well,
concern of
it
yours?
was better than being on a ammunition ship.
But when they said that your new assignment was a new gasoline tanker, were you like a little concerned about that?
Well, you know, back then you didn't have much concern or choice. You know, the only thing you do is keep your mouth shut and not volunteer. So, no, my golly, that there's so many different ships and things that had problems and troubles. That, no, I thought very fortunate. There was a lot of them that didn't have the good fortune that we had, and so I stayed on her till down in Babblethorpe, I guess it was, and I got my orders, and come back to the States, and got leave and got I got reassigned to a new construction, which was APA, and it was being built in Portland. And just before she went in commission, the shipyard burnt, so it delayed that for quite a while. And so I was up there in Portland for some time. And in the meantime, when I was down in Frisco, wife-to-be came out, and we was married there in the Navy Chapel on Treasure Island. And we had time together up until I got the ship in commission in Portland. And then I made one trip on the old Bear, 237. And we moved to Yokosuka, or Yokosuka, or wherever they call it, and picked up troops, brought the troops back to San Francisco.
So the war was over at this point?
Now, see, the war was over in August,
Okay.
and this was in October when the ship was commissioned.
Okay.
And so I had planned on staying in, and I thought about it, and different things come up that I thought, well, things didn't go just like I thought they should or something, and I was a little bit of a rebel anyhow. And so I went down to New Orleans and to get paid off down to Lake Pontchartrain. I think I was the 70th person paid off down there at that station at that time. And then they give me my final pay, and came back to Tulsa and started looking for a job here.
Did your role as an electrician in the Navy help you find employment here?
I don't know whether it actually helped me or not. I went to work for a utility company.
Okay.
And of course that, I think in the department that I was in up there at the time, I think there were 14 of us in that department. And I'm the only one that's left now. I outlived all them, so I figure I'm real fortunate in a lot of ways. Good Lord's blessed me in many ways, and I've got more to be thankful for and I got to gripe about. But I tell them I only gripe when so people will know that it's a human nature to do, and I do that so people still think I'm human. But it's just life's been good. I mean, my golly, you look around at other people and friends of mine and whatnot, and the troubles they have, and I think, oh, I don't have anything to gripe about, period. And we do still, with all the stuff in this country that's going on, we still got one of the finest countries there is. This is a great nation. And my heart bleeds for all the boys that's in the service, boys and girls both in the service today, because I know that they're not having a good time all the time. There's good times and there's bad times. Yeah. And enjoy the good and make the best of it, because every cloud's got a silver lining someplace.
Yeah. Well, I have some questions. Do you mind if I
Surely.
go through some of these? First off, what was your impression of the officers and fellow sailors that you served with?
Generally speaking, most of them were fine people. And it's just like anything else, you're going to have a misfit and everything, and one person's not going to please everybody. But by and large, I think we had a great group of people, great officers, men to work with, and everything else. I mean, there was overall why I won't complain.
Now, you mentioned that once the Japanese attacked, that you were below deck, making sure that hatches were sealed and whatnot. Is that correct?
It was closing up the hatches when the boatswain's hill said set condition Z, which they had different conditions A, B, and C, D, you know. And Z was to tighten, set all watertight compartments up for battle conditions. That's what it was.
So were you doing that the entire time the ship was underway and trying to get out of the harbor?
I guess I was, because I couldn't help. I was down below.
Okay. So when you finally had a chance to go topside after the attack, could you describe what you saw?
Yeah, when we went up topside, they had the bodies laid out there on the quarter deck. And I went by to see if I could recognize anybody. And we lost 50 some odd people. And it was, you know, some of them you could partially recognize, some you couldn't. And because when the body goes through a bombing, some of the parts and some is not there. And that, I guess, well, of course, that was the first time that I'd ever seen that many deaths in one time. And it gets to you, and it affects some people different ways than does others. But that was just a fact of life, and we went on from there.
Well, you mentioned that it wasn't until February when they got the patch out to fix the hole in the torpedo. What were you doing to get the ship back underway? What sort of things they have you take care of?
Well, as they was pumping the ship out, and as the water went down, it was an electrical division. And as the water went down, we'd see a motor or anything like that. We took the motor loose, sent it over to the yard for them to repair it and clean it up. And so they opened one compartment back aft, and the methane gas in there affected, I think, 4 people, and 2 of them fell down. George Clarkson. We had a plank owner on the ship, old Pete DeFries. He was with him, and he went down. We lost those 2 guys due to the methane gas from the compartment that had been closed up for a long time.
Between the methane gas, actually. Wow. Okay.
And it wham, and they pulled them. Everybody went up forecastle, and then after that, when we went through with the ship to do any repair, I mean, to get motors out and this, that, and the other, you had to go in the buddy system. You had to go 2 together, and each one of you wore a piece of litmus paper. And so you're supposed to keep your eye on your buddy's litmus paper all the time. And but that was the only thing. I mean, out of Combat Div 1, which consisted of the Arizona, Oklahoma, and Nevada, and the Nevada was the only surviving ship. And I thought we were real fortunate because, well, 2/3 of the casualties out of Pearl was in Combat Div, out of Combat Div 1. It was Arizona and the Oklahoma. And so we only lost 50 some odd people. So as we was going out the channel, they tried to sink us in the channel, and all the bombing and stuff we took then, I think we were very, very fortunate, and good Lord had his hand over us, I guess.
I agree. When you were underway, could you hear the bombs exploding around you from the Japanese, or were you just too busy doing what you were doing?
Couldn't hear below decks.
Yep.
Didn't hear any of that stuff going on.
What about Pearl? When were you able to go back? I'm imagining you had to go back and forth between the harbor and the ship. Is that correct? Did you do much of that?
Oh yeah, well, we first couple of nights we slept over in the bowling alley over at Block Center, and then they moved us up in the bleachers and we slept up there. Then they built some barracks, and they moved us in the barracks, and this was while they was still working on the ship, and they transferred most of the crew, and I was among a handful that was left in our division, and so there wasn't too many of the crew, and of course there was a bunch of new people come aboard just before we left there to bring it back to the States, and they stayed on. A lot of them stayed on through the war, and but like I say, I went to the old Kern and was on her for about 2 years, and then came back and went on the Bear. Made one trip on her and got paid off and come back to Tulsa and started working for a utility company, and worked for here, and I worked at GRDA for a while. Moved up to Pryor, to Springfield, Missouri. Worked with the Department of Interior, which is a SPA, and then they transferred me back down here. And after a little over 30 years, I decided I'd retire, and so I took early retirement. And I've enjoyed life since then, but probably shouldn't have retired, but I did.
Well, what about your wife? You mentioned that you married her. Was this right after the war or before the war ended?
Oh, it was before the war. It was in July the 22nd, 1945.
Could you describe how you met her?
Went to school with her.
Oh, really?
We had school together, and then I come home on leave. I went to alumni meeting or something and met her again, and so then from there it blossomed into a marriage, and I still figure out how in the world she put up with me for 55 years, but bless her heart, she did. And so we had a girl and a boy, and we never had to go bail them out of jail, so I think she done a fine job of raising them.
Well, I mean, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, clearly it made national, international news. Your parents must have known that you were in Pearl Harbor. When were you able to contact them, let them know that you were okay?
I don't know how long it was. I know that the Red Cross had cards for you to sign, but I think it was 2 or 3 weeks before the folks ever got a card, because then at that time they started censoring mail, incoming mail and outgoing mail. All your letters were censored, and so they didn't know anything for true, I guess, until they got that letter from the Red Cross, or that card, because nobody was doing any writing at that time. Of course, you still send Clipper mail is 20 cents a stamps, 20 cents a piece for Clipper mail. Then they started that email, or
V-mail?
Yeah, VJ mail. VJ mail. And they'd take the letter and photograph it and condense it, and then ship it, and then blow it back up. And it was a mess.
Well, speaking of VJ, I mean, where were you when the war was over?
I was still in Portland after they dropped the bomb on the 6th of July or August. I was in Portland still waiting on new construction, because like I say, the shipyard had burnt, and they was rebuilding, doing a repair on the Bear. And so that was in August, and so she didn't go in commission until October. So I was there in Portland, Oregon, till October, and then we made trial runs, and then made one run to Japan, and I spent Christmas Eve in Japan. standing out in front of the Emperor's Palace grounds.
Really? Could you describe that? You were part of the occupation force?
No, no, this, I was still on the ship, and once I was just caught a train running up to Tokyo and went out to the Emperor's Palace to see what it looked like, and of course it had this big moat around it, and but Tokyo at that time looked like a tornado had hit it.
Really?
Because after the firebombing, for several weeks the 26s had firebombed Tokyo, and it, my golly, was not too many buildings standing what I could see, because they had more wood buildings than they had masonry. But oh, it was a mess.
Wow. What about the people, the Japanese? What condition were they in when you saw them?
I didn't come in any contact with any of them, or a few,
Yeah.
but they were, they weren't belligerent type of people. I mean, they were very, actually I think most of them are very social people.
Mm-hmm. Well, you didn't have a chance to really interact with them too much, but you did see at Tokyo was pretty well devastated.
Oh yeah, that it was burnt because of firebombing and all.
They tell about the women and the shoes at the palace.
Oh, in front of the palace ground, standing out there in this big parade ground, rocky, or well, not rocky, but a chat, and these two gals come up there and kicked their sandals off and walked across this gravel park or parade ground over to the moat, and knelt down and prayed toward the Emperor's Palace or whatnot. And of course at the time I thought, well, that's really stupid. But yet, that whole generation of those people, they'd been taught from childhood up that the Emperor was a divine person. And by the same token, had we had to invade Japan, I don't have any idea what the casualties would have been or anything, but you would have had the whole Japanese nation down there fighting our landing forces, I think, because they were devoted to the Emperor. And that kind of devotion, why a person would give up their life for it, for kids on up.
Yeah.
And they would have been down there with some fly swatters. But so I think that as horrible as the A-bomb was, it stopped a hell of a war, because there was, well, nothing in last century has there been more people involved in anything than during World War II. It involved more people, more nations, more country worldwide. It was a worldwide war. And as far as I'm concerned, the survivors of that war, thank God for everybody.
Yeah, I agree. When you think back to your time in the service, being in the Navy, first as a volunteer and then later as a veteran in World War II, how did it affect you later in life in terms of your view on life? How did it change relative to your viewpoint before you went into the service?
Well, of course, they always used to laugh about the diplomacy that the English made. You know, that the diplomats fell flat over the face and it didn't work out. But I still think that old Teddy Roosevelt had it right when you can speak softly and carry a big stick. I still think you got to be like the Boy Scouts motto is be prepared. And if this nation is not prepared, I think they had plenty of warnings on this trade center deal. But information is necessary. But it's not worth a darn unless it goes to the right people and they make up their mind to do something. You've got to have the right people making the decisions. And by the same token, who do we know is right today and wrong tomorrow? It's a sort of a toss-up, because as long as mankind's been around, you've had wars and rumor of wars, and I guess you always will have. But there'll be another group of doing it, because we're going to depend on our youth to do it all the time.
Yeah.
We have ever since the Revolutionary War and before, that we have depended on the young people to do our fighting for us.
When you think back to your time in the service, what memories stick out or are the strongest after all this time?
Oh, no one particular thing, of course, except that, of course, on the 7th of December of 41, I'll never forget that.
Yeah.
And I can't. There's lots of things that I can't that I don't remember, that I'd like to forget of other things, but one of those things like that affects you so much that I don't think that anybody could forget it. Because I don't think there had been a day in the last century that happened that affected as many people worldwide as that one day did. And I just thank God each day that I survived the day.
Well, I really appreciate you allowing me in your house and talking with you about this. I only have one last question.
Yes.
And that is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't had a chance to talk about during this interview?
No, not really, because like I say, my life was very, very uninteresting life as far as that goes. I mean,
I don't know about that. That's debatable.
well, I mean, I've just got a lot to be thankful for, and I do thank God for all the blessings He's given me each and every day. And I've had a lot of wonderful friends and met a lot of wonderful people, and that's been a blessing and a bless to me, that to meet so many wonderful people in this country, because there's a lot of good people. All you hear about in the newspaper is blood, guts, and gore, but there's still an awful lot of good people.
Yeah, I agree.
Wonderful people.
Well, I think it's I really appreciate, you know, what you've done for us. You may say you've had an uninteresting life, but I would say you've probably experienced more in those 2 or 3 days than most people did in a lifetime.
Well, but my golly, just think of those boys that was in ground service, those gyrenes that made those landings on the beaches and things like that. And boy, I tell you, I don't know how they screw up enough energy and all to do it.
Now, you were saying that the ship, the Kerns, is that correct? The Kern, which was the gasoline tanker, that you supported some of the landings, it sounded like, that you
Well,
ended up on fuel? Or?
we followed up on, we wasn't involved in the landings at the
Sure.
time, but right after they made the landings and was taking the islands or something, why, we'd come in and offload gasoline to the airport or something, or to the airfield. But no, we were not engaged in any activities whatsoever, which there again I'm very thankful, because
I feel like a kind of gasoline
Yeah,
tanker, that would have been bad.
well, all the tools we used on the top side were bronze tools,
Yeah,
because they would make a spark.
yeah.
'Cause,
That's a good point. That's right.
Avgas, we had 150 octane gas, and you could throw a cup of that stuff up in the air and nothing drop. Because that's out in the tropics, because it'd just evaporate.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, we were fortunate. I mean, before the war was over, I think there was 40 some odd of those AOGs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Quite a fleet of them.
Yeah.
Now, would you also refuel the aircraft carriers or just a land base?
No, just the land bases.
How did you do that? Did you use barrels of gas and drive?
No, well, like there was one place we'd pull up, and they had the hose. They'd take a hose and put it on buoys and float it over to the beach. and then pump the gas through a regular pipe or hose connector, and float the hose over on the beach, and then connect that up to their storage unit. And that's
Wow. So they had a little pipeline to the storage tanks, and you just hook it up and just pull it into it just pumped it out of there.
pull in there and hook up. It wasn't exactly like pulling up to a dock and offloading anything. None of those places had docks much.
Yeah. Well, how close to the beach do you have to get in order to get the buoy out there and the line?
It wasn't too. We was awful shallow draft anyhow, so we didn't have to get up too close.
Okay.
And they just anchor off there and string a hose over the side and float it over and put buoys on it to keep it floating over to the beach, and then they had to hook up pumps and then pump the gas off.
One thing I forgot to ask you is those. There was a couple of hurricanes that a lot of the fleet sailed into. Did you experience any of that, or are you away from the hurricanes?
We got just on the tail end of one of them, and that was, we got underway one night due to the fact that we was tied up to an old phosphate loading dock, or it wasn't dock, it was well, the Germans had built it down in Babelthorpe, and we got underway to ride the hurricane out the tail of it in, and we didn't. We rode the hurricane, or the tail end of that hurricane out. We rode that all right, but there was a lot of smaller craft that got LSTs and stuff like that got wrecked on the beach and whatnot due to it. But we were very fortunate, like I say, in more ways than one.
Yeah,
Guys,
sounds like it.
because some of those, that hurricane hit the fleet up there, and Halsey's fleet, and it was all on under. Well, they were getting ready to refuel, and they didn't have any ballast. And they lost several ships. A lot of tin cans were lost.
Yes.
Bigger ships. So we weren't in the heart of the hurricane, which I'm thankful. I'm thankful.
Yeah. Wow. I've read documents where sailors who were at Pearl Harbor and some of the early engagements around Guadalcanal said they were never more scared than they were during those hurricanes.
Yeah.
It was that bad.
Yeah.
That's what I had to ask. Hey, you've got a couple of really cool artifacts. Can I pause the tape and just have you get on tape just to explain what some of these are? Would that be okay? All right, let me pause the tape for a second. Okay, your daughter Harriet, is that correct?
Yes.
Mentioned something about a T-shirt. Could you just put this in the
Always,
context?
well, most your name stenciled on your skivvy shirt and everything else, and apparently Giles was wearing Kick Bush's shirt or something, because I remember Kick Bush's folks got the notification that he had been killed, and he wasn't, and so it was one of the other guys that had somebody else's T-shirt on.
These guys that you knew?
Okay. In the same division, because we only lost 2 out of our division.
Okay.
But all that. There's a lot of stuff on that.
Well, your daughter mentioned something about your hand.
Oh, I fell several years ago and sprained my wrist, and they took an X-ray of it, and the doctor was so concerned about that piece of metal in the palm of my hand, and I said I wouldn't worry about it. It's been over 40 years. So.
Really? So that was, they had the X-ray and had some shrapnel from.
Yeah, I guess that's where it come from.
Yeah, probably makes sense.
Yeah, and because of course those old ships, my gosh, had been painted and painted and painted, and painted over, and hell, I had a whole head full of paint chips for a week after that. Just
Really?
For the concussion hit that paint and pop it off, and it was just like shrapnel flying, and it'd fester up, and it'd come to the head and come out.
So the concussion was strong enough to drive some of those paint chips into your skin, basically.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Of course, when it hit those old metal, and metal gives, and that plant, just flies, you know.
Yeah,
'cause,
it kind of spalled off there.
yeah, well, of course, some of that old paint was nearly a quarter-inch thick, too.
Well, there's some other things I wouldn't mind having you explain. Let me zoom out a little bit.
Uh-huh.
And I'm actually going to take the camera off. And if you could just hold this up and just explain what each of these are real quick.
Oh,
Let me
this,
grab this.
Oh, this was the,
Wait, Daddy, he's gonna start it.
There we go. Okay, go ahead.
oh, this is the watch list for the E Division for the 6th and 7th of December 1941. And this was hanging on the power shop, and then we raised the ship. Why, I pulled it off the shop, I don't know, hang on to it. And I was here on security patrol from midnight to 4. And I've just hung on to that. And of course, the longer I keep it, the more it means to me, because it doesn't mean to a lot to anybody else, but
But that's actually was hanging on the door in the
hanging on
Nevada.
the bulletin board there in the power shop on the old Nevada. So
That's amazing. And the other thing that you have here is, well, I'll let you explain it. What is this?
that is the name tag actually off of the after distribution board.
Really?
Yeah, of course. And that, well, when we was stripping the ship and everything, and I don't know, I hung on to that thing, and I guess I shouldn't have hung on to some of that stuff, but
I think it's good that you did, actually. This is pretty
it's
interesting.
just, of course, there's a lot of it is just nothing but junk, you know. I mean,
Wow. You know what they say about one man's junk?
one man's junk's another man's treasure.
Exactly. And lastly, we've got some interesting artifacts here. Could you just
Oh,
describe what you got in this,
Oh,
this
golly,
blue
let's
box?
see. Oh, let's see. Oh, that's just a piece of shrapnel that picked up off the ship, and there's a rivet head that popped loose. When that popped loose and flew, that's just like a rivet or a head.
Just like a bullet flying through the
Yeah.
air.
There's another piece of, looks like an old bomb or something as
does.
part of the shrapnel. So it made some pretty, and I don't know, I picked it up, and then there's a little piece of plane that we over on the cane field that I tore off or something.
It's got some red paint on it, does it not?
Yeah, it's got the red paint on it there, and that, yeah, I don't know whether that was part of the,
Bullet hole.
no, it wasn't part of the, it was a part of the red dot on the plane.
Yeah.
And then there was some old Japanese machine gun bullets. It was that was one of the planes that was shot down in the cane field there.
Wow. So that was something that you were able to.
And I just picked it up and hung on to it as sort of a souvenir thing. So.
Wow. Well, I think it's great. I just want to get that on tape. And again, I really am today discussing
Oh,
this
my
with you.
golly. Been nice having you.
All right.
You want a Coke or Dr. Pepper?